The freedom schools emerged within the context of a political movement that was underway. A struggle for civil rights was underway. The specific trigger was the schools, meaning public education, did not educate students. Black students in particular, we used to call the kind of education that Black students were getting in public schools sharecropper education, because the assumption driving it was that the only thing that Blacks needed to learn how to do was pick cotton as sharecropper. You didn't need to educate them. Therefore, you didn't need to spend any money on the schools. And there was a clear consensus in the Black community that public education was not educating the children of the community. So that was a consensus you could work within if you could find the resources. Black history involves more than classroom lectures during Black History Month. Studying America. How could a country that said it subscribed to the notion we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, then have a system such as the one that existed in Mississippi? Students in Freedom School could ask those kinds of questions because they picked up on it. You couldn't do that in public school run by the counties. Or if you have spaces where students can be completely free to think through and interact with each other and interact with older people, quite frankly, you almost have to go to private school to get an expanded ability to question the world around you. So I'm very much in favor of continuing the Freedom School idea. Good education, by definition, is anti-racist. A good education, by definition, undermines white supremacy and racism. Real education imparts dignity.
The problem that we're trying to address is the continuing persistent national failure to adequately educate children from racial minorities. One of the models that will inform our work comes from the freedom schools that came out of the civil rights movement in the 1960s. And those schools were partly an attempt to respond to the inadequate education available to Black people in Mississippi in those days, but partly an attempt to develop in them a sense that they could be a part of historical change, a sense that they could be a part of making the society around them better. They are built around two principles: affirming the dignity of children and helping build their own sense of agency, both of which are typically undermined by racism. What we have learned about how you build a sense of agency in children is that you push complicated ideas down. You have them deal with controversy as a part of the curriculum. You have a curriculum that reflects them. You have a curriculum that puts them into contact with people in their local community who are doing things. You have a curriculum that is always asking them for their opinion, for what they think about things, then getting them to try to translate their opinion into reality, into action, and then letting them learn from their own victories and their own mistakes. We expect them to be folk who will be problem solvers. And if we don't get both of that, then we have failed.
The Newark Freedom School is a collaborative project between the Office of University and Community Partnerships here at Rutgers Newark and the Cornwall Center at Rutgers Newark. And essentially it started back in 2014 as an initiative to kind of support the academic needs of the students at the time. We were working on a Promise Neighborhood grant. And as part of that, we were looking for some out of school time supports for students in literacy. And so we were managed to find the Freedom School program and were enrolled for the summer of 2014 with our first 30 students. And since then, we have aimed to serve 30 students every summer at 13th Avenue School. And this year, we're lucky to partner with Bethany Baptist Church, who has been another longstanding Freedom School program here in the city. And we'll be partnering with them to provide some technical supports and financial supports to lead their Freedom School program. The Freedom School program here in Newark actually uses the Children's Defense Fund integrated reading curriculum that's supplied to programs every summer. They are heavily rooted in that community building experience, right? And it's heavily rooted in Black culture. And so a lot of times our staff goes to this training and they're expecting it to be a basic conference, right? Where you're sitting down, you're learning how to implement a curriculum, you're learning how to engage with the students, but they're not expecting to come into a gymnasium at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning and immediately are up dancing to Frankie Beverly and all these different things, but just to get you engaged so that when we start to do the learning, you know, you're still bopping in your seat a little bit, right? And if I was to describe the Freedom School program to someone who was unfamiliar with the program, I would definitely describe it as a culturally relevant literacy-based program and really start to dive into some of those principles of the Freedom School. I think starting with the theme, each year the theme is the same, and it's I can make a difference. And as students progress through the week, they learn how they can make a difference in themselves, their families, their communities, their countries, their world, and with hope, action, and education, that we're really working to build servant leadership with your students, right? So we're using that literacy component to build them into servant leaders.
One of the best experiences was to see some of our students who were reluctant because we did not force scholars. If you did not want to participate, we didn't force them. But just to see the students who were reluctant and adamant about not doing it, just begin to chip away at their hard exterior day after day, and then finally at one of the weeks saying, hey, I want to actually lead Harambee. I think that was one of the best experiences to me.
Freedom School is a movement. Just like the civil rights movement, the social justice movement, Black Lives Matter, all of those movements that advocate for the rights of a person, a young person, to be able to read, to have the pleasure of getting lost in a book. Anyone who can should volunteer. If they hear that there's a Freedom School in their school or in their community, they should inquire, how can I help? How can I be a part of it? You know, and that's what really makes it happen.
Something inside so strong. Oh, something inside so strong. Brothers and sisters, when they insist we're just not good enough. We know better, just look them in the eye.